Hi, everyone. Ella Seitz with Esplanade Ventures. We're an early stage digital health VC, so we do software services as well as medtech, seed through Series B, based in Toronto with offices in Montreal as well. If you're an early stage startup, happy to get to know you guys. I'll try not to be too evil.
Hello, I'm Christy Prada. I'm the CEO of Future Fertility. We're an AI company that solves a critical gap in the fertility process, which is understanding the quality of your eggs.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Jacob. I'm here on behalf of Alan, the first health insurance provider in Canada to be licensed here since 1957. Yeah, that was the year the Whopper came out, the year Toyota came to the market, and American Express launched their first credit card. So just putting it in perspective.
That's amazing, guys. Thanks for the intros. Really excited to be on the stage with you. So we're gonna have a good conversation about kind of a whole bunch of different stuff. I mean, I feel like we gotta start with this A1, as Michael talked it, right? A1, we're gonna talk about A1. And really I wanna kind of understand from your lens and your perspective, because you guys come from different backgrounds. We've got like really early startup, we've got venture funding. When I think about AI, I want to know, like, when you're having the conversations about fundraising or scaling or whatever, like how important is that now in today's conversations? And like, if you don't have it figured out, are you kind of disqualified already? Like, give me some perspective on that in terms of your journeys.
One number, 60%. That's the percentage of all health tech deals in the last year that were AI-based. So, and it's growing massively. So I think if you don't have AI at least integrated, you're just going to fall behind in some way. I think it's an expectation that's going on around the table. Obviously, hardware is a bit different, but if you're in the SaaS or services businesses, it's very much transforming. I think services is actually the underrated one. We're having a lot of conversations around how can they benefit. The reality is, like, AI spending right now at healthcare payers, providers, is actually outstripping IT spend, to give you a little bit of perspective. So I think it's really important. The hype is worth it. You've seen some numbers. The number I like to think about is we all know EMRs. What EMRs did in 5 years, generative AI did in 1 year. So join the race.
And certainly being an AI startup, I echo that. But I would also say that, you know, in the years since I've been in this role, I've noticed also a shift. While it is important to be in the conversation, it can also come across as hypey. So finding that balance of doing something that is real and solving a problem with AI, not AI for the sake of AI. Certainly every business should be integrating it in terms of how you do things. How do you get more out of your people and get more leverage and move quicker and all that fun startup jazz. But I think it does make it harder for VCs to cut through the noise and know the difference between, like, oh, I just threw AI in the back of my name and, like, yeah, we use like some random LLM, right? Versus actually building something that solves a real problem and that being at the core of what you do. So being able to talk about it, I think, in a clear, specific way about what it is that you're doing and why AI has to be used to solve that problem, I believe is important.
I'll answer this from kind of the operator lens of both the internal and the external. So let's start with the external of AI being something that is propelling businesses forward, but not replacing. So our parent company, which is based in France, they launched to great success an AI clinical like physician, where people are able to go and ask for, you know, primary health needs, can go ask questions to really high success rates, really high satisfaction rates. So being able to kind of take the brunt off the healthcare system. So being able to kind of complement to something and remove friction for an existing, you know, problem that we're facing is a huge factor. From the internal standpoint, I think that there's working internally at a company and as an operator of thinking about how do you implement AI into your day-to-day. It kind of also can trickle out from there. You see it more and more where people are talking about the operating systems for their businesses and how that is something that is integrating AI into their day-to-day operations. Thinking about that and how that also applies to, you know, the way in which you project your product and market, I think is hugely is hugely reflective.
That's great, guys. When we think about, actually, this one's for you, Ella. I just want to get a better perspective from you on when you think about industries, obviously from a funding perspective, we know that AI is really going to be kind of interjected into everything. So what industries in healthcare is your firm and the people that you're working with, what are you guys really looking at these days? What are you guys focused on? What do you see as emerging? Where are the opportunities for the people in the room to kind of think about?
So when I think about kind of the AI adoption curve, we were relatively early, I think, in investing in AI in healthcare. So our first fund, like in 2019, we started investing in AI in healthcare. And I think we were all kind of trying to figure out what's the good applications. And I think in some ways we still are. I mean, Jeffrey Hinton famously said, like, I wouldn't train any more radiologists. We're investors in RadAI. That company is not replacing radiologists. It's a half unicorn that's helping them see more patients, get faster at analyzing results, improve workflow. So I think it's a little bit misleading. I do think that things that are kind of less patient impact, like I think about healthcare is one space where we can't move fast and break things, people will die. But there's a lot of inefficiency. There's a ton of paper. There's a lot of manual labor. And so wherever you see that, whether that's, the claims adjusting in the background or the analysis, the lab results, the inundation of emails and faxes, there's so much in the back end that I think is really interesting. There's also diagnostics. So think about in terms of analyzing large amounts of data, I mean, AI is going to be better. So anything that you can kind of apply a logic, a system, a structure to, I think automatically lends itself better. And anywhere where you have really big wait times, and I think it's going to go kind of from the back towards the patient. So whenever I think about kind of providing the actual clinical support, clinical decision-making, co-piloting, absolutely. And if you think back end, earlier priority, but there's some amazing, I think there's 1,000 different FDA-approved AI algorithms. Like, that's a lot. And anybody who's gone through FDA or Health Canada approval can speak to the fact that that's pretty hard. So I do think it's everywhere, but I would start with least patient-facing and diagnostics to start.
Awesome. You guys, Christy, you guys have anything to say? Jacob, any additional comments on that?
Nothing specifically to add there.
Okay. Cool. We're going to move into something else here. I want to get a better understanding from the provider side. You guys are building businesses that are doing different things in the healthcare ecosystem. When we think about AI, how are you guys handling the governance, risk management, data, security? Like, that's a huge deal. We know that, like, when you look at like big RFPs and proposals and like corporations, like, if you don't have that and if you're not like super locked down, like, it's not happening. So can you guys share some perspective on that from your lenses?
One of the first questions that I asked when I joined Allen was, so Allen is a it's a health insurance company with a health integrated partnership as a part of this. So effectively, what you are able to do is to think more proactively about your health and leverage healthcare tools on the platform. So one of the first questions that I asked when I joined the company was, well, if you're my insurance provider, but you also have my health data, how is that going to work? How is that going to be something that is going to influence the pricing? And how is that going to be something that influences ultimately where I'm going to get charged and security of my data, my health data? And evidently, the way that it works, it is walled off. It's completely walled off. There is the health insurance component and the health provider components, and those two data points are completely separate from one another. The only times that anything is kind of shared across, it's completely anonymous and as ways to help improve healthcare products. So pricing is not affected by it. The way in which your service and if you qualify for other care is not affected by it. These are two completely walled off data sets. And I think that is something that more and more people and more customers and more prospective customers and clients are going to ask about, because data sets are just so it's so easy for the fluidity of data, especially with the way that it's being shared through large language models, just to be able to kind of be mindful of that and, get out ahead of it.
Yeah, so for us being a company that processes medical images, we have to be very careful about that too. So everything about how it's set up, we don't collect or store patient identifiers, all that typical stuff. I think the additional piece for us is the fact that we are a software as a medical device and have to go through regulatory, which means we have to maintain very stringent QMS requirements, and everything's documented in detailed policies, procedures, processes. Had to work through and think through all of that before going to market in a new region. So that's been at the core of what we do because it's a requirement, as well as, of course, it's the right thing to do. So that's how we think about it.
Awesome, thank you. Ella, question. Give me some things that are red flags for you and your team. What are the things that when you have conversations and there's all this stuff going on and potential work deals and opportunities, and then you get, you start doing due diligence, and share some red flags or things that are starting to come up. Things change quick now. Literally things change so fast. It's hard to keep on top of everything. So would love for you to give us some thoughts on red flags and challenges.
I think one of the first problems I encourage a lot of founders, and when I don't have a good answer, it's probably a big yellow flag, is who pays? What's your business model? If you don't have one, healthcare is really hard. There's a lot of really great ideas, but it doesn't mean they're going to get funded and somebody's going to pay for it. And so if you don't have a business model, it's oh, we will build this free app and then other people will pay for it. That's really hard to do. I think in today's world, AI is a buzzword. So how are you using AI? Is it just, whenever I hear people saying AI and we have ML and I'm like, and what are you actually doing and which model are you building and how are you using it? I think that's also a very common one right now. And then is this a product? Is it a feature? Is it something that really has a big enough market? There's a lot of great businesses that don't need to be venture backed because the market's not big enough. If your market in North America is not $1 billion, it could still be an amazing business for you and your co-founders. It might just not be venture backable, and that is totally fine. But think through that. And then the last one is probably just why are you the right person to solve this problem? So I think founder product market fit, because as we've seen now, a lot of founders, we like to help them in the early stages. It's really hard, and if you're really passionate, as clearly some of my fellow panelists are, it's a lot easier, I think, to survive through what is a lot of ups and downs.
That's great. Thank you. Would you guys have any thoughts on when you think about your journeys personally for your businesses? Have you experienced any bulkheads or challenges that Ella kind of just outlined that you had to overcome, or any major hurdles that you felt that you and the team really did a great job of hey man, this is a problem and we all got to put our heads together and you fixed it? Do you have any examples that you might want to share with everyone?
Yeah, for us, one of the major challenges is we're a tool that's used by these very niche labs that drive the fertility process, and also used by doctors. So the technology is installed in the lab and then used by doctors. So getting adoption actually means we have to tackle 3 different stakeholder groups. We have to talk to the embryology team and get them on board with using the software. We have to make sure clinicians are on board with understanding clinical use case and value this tool can provide in their counseling. And we actually have to talk to patients and make sure they're aware about it, because it's a technology that's installed in the lab and used in the clinic. But doctors are trying to think of a million different things when they're talking to a patient. So keeping it top of mind can be really hard for the doctor. So tackling the challenge around getting adoption and scaling that adoption quickly instead of just letting it naturally play out is really hard. It's something we're working through right now, and we've taken, I think, a lot of really creative approaches at mixing, how do you talk to different stakeholder groups to make sure you're being really creative about driving adoption and getting that usability. Because sometimes with tools like this, it might be, to Ella's point, the greatest idea in the world, but if people aren't using it, you're still not able to drive the right value for clients, getting them to pay for it and getting them to, pay you in return. So we've had to be really creative, and I think we're still solving that problem, but have come leaps and bounds ahead of where we were a couple years ago. And based on what I can see in the market, we're one of the few AI companies in the fertility space that's not only getting installed clinics, but getting clinics to actually use our technology every day and working with patients. So I'm proud of that. Still work to go, work to do on that front, but getting really creative about talking to different stakeholder groups I think is a theme that can resonate in probably anywhere in digital health.
For us at Allen, there's been 3 that have stood out to me. There's been the realistic go-to-market, there's been the regulatory hurdles, and then there's been making sure that this product or the service fits into the lives and is not kind of a roadblock, doesn't cause friction. On the first one of go-to-market, realities, when you are working in health, as we all are here in health tech, the Canada Health and the regulatory hurdles there, they are something you have to overcome and navigate through in order to bring your product to market. We started scoping out Canada 2 years before we even put somebody on the ground here, of like seeing that this is something that we could actually do, be able to capitalize and be able to run properly and have the right burn rate to be able to do it while not completely putting ourselves way behind the 8 ball. So, being realistic about how you go to market and the avenues that you do it. Is it something that you need high touch sales? Is it something that can be done self-serve? And how are you able to kind of manage that funnel? So I think that those are hurdles that we've certainly encountered. Second one being regulatory hurdles. I in my own kind of past life of like understanding the kind of hand waviness that can often happen, to say, oh yeah, we'll just figure it out. We'll figure out the regulatory stuff. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time. My colleague Peter, who's here, he's kind of been spearheading this along with other people of making sure that we're able to get through the regulatory hurdles of each province. So you have the national regulations, and then each province. They're all like walled gardens. Like we're not one big country, it's big one, all walled gardens. So being able to get through that has been something that we have definitely had to kind of stick handle through. And then the last one is like, how do you find a way to not cause friction in somebody's life and really making it so that it's something that, is it something that is, feasible and viable, but ultimately desirable to your end customer? So I would say those 3 things have really kind of stood out to me.
That's great. Thanks, guys, for the perspective. I want to slightly shift gears now, and I want to talk about money. I want to talk about raising capital, exit strategies, all of that kind of stuff. Obviously, Ella, that's your space, that's your go-to. But obviously, Christy and Jacob, you guys have probably been in the fundraising space for the last little bit, scaling up your businesses. So, want to get your perspectives on where you think the ecosystem is right now in Canada for kind of the fundraising piece of this equation. Strengths, weaknesses, things to think about, as there's probably a lot of people in this room that are on that journey or thinking about that journey, or maybe they're on the exit component of their business and they've built a successful business and they're thinking about how do I capitalize on this and how do I maximize value, and who's the right person for that?
I can start a little bit. So I'm in the midst of fundraising right now. It's as the slide that Michael so generously put up there, it's tough, right? It's a shift. I was at Maple before this, and we certainly benefited from some of the growth in digital health. Maple continues to be an amazing company, and I'm very proud to have worked there. But yeah, I look at the fundraising environment, and it's very different now. I think there's still capital to be had, and there's a focus that I'm seeing a lot of funds really prioritizing early stage company seed. I feel like there's a lot of seed capital out there to be had. I think as you go further along, the hurdles to get through to get more money based on how capitalized you've been so far, how much money you've taken to date, who's on your cap table, what's your growth rate, right? All the things that were talked about, that doesn't always align with health tech, with digital health. For me being in med tech and not just the regulatory, but the clinical validation work you need to do, timelines don't always line up from a VC standpoint. So I think it's not always a given. There's been a lot of hype and still a lot of good opportunity to be had, but finding that right investor partner with the right kind of timeline horizon, I think is really critical and can be hard to do. I'm optimistic for all of us in the room and for the economy as a whole. Hopefully we'll, start to turn around one day, and I think that can impact things too. I think there's a ton of potential, but it's getting harder and harder for sure. So being able to, make sure you're focused on solving the right problem, have a clear ROI, have a timeline horizon that lines up with what your investors might be looking for, and a really clear exit plan. I think those are the important things.
So I do agree. It's been a challenging environment. I think one of the what was on that slide of 21 is there was a lot of exits, but also valuations have probably got out of hand. And I think just the metric and that it was kind of growth at any cost, a lot of burn. And so I think probably not the best use of capital. And I would say as a VC that has investors as well, like as many of you guys know, VCs fundraise as well. LPs are starved for capital. We had our first exit earlier this year, and the amount of love we got from our LPs was huge, mostly because there aren't any. Now, the good news is the last 2 weeks, I think, have been really material. And in general, I think Q1 and Q2 this year have been really good. We've had Hinge Health and Omada very publicly IPO. I think that is great news for our entire sector and really kind of validating that there are good exits. The market is thawing. There's also been a fair bit of M&A uptake. So I think the last stat I saw is we're actually on pace with some of the highest highs in terms of M&A. But I would say that the market has matured, right? Like I think what has happened is COVID gave us the tailwind to understand what it takes. And so what used to be seed stage is now pre-seed, and what everybody kind of like downgraded, but the valuations haven't changed. And so today, when I talk to a seed stage company, I'm expecting them to have around 300 to 700,000 in revenue. Definitely different for hardware. When I'm thinking about Series A, it's typically 2 to 5 now. That is what could have gone for Series B before the pandemic. And so I think there's been a little bit of a recalibration that need to happen. I'm hopeful that we're there and that the market is opening up. I think there is a flight to quality and a flight to AI. So I would say the deals are definitely getting done, but there are a little bit more of the more hyped 100 million plus companies that have had like traction. I think the expectations are just higher, which has made it more challenging, but also venture capital, as I think we've heard from some of our presenters, not always the answer. And I would say, I would encourage founders in the room, like bootstrap for as long as you can. Like VC definitely comes with strings attached, expectations, governance. Make sure that it's the right thing for your business and what you're building. And then we'd love to be good partners. And that has to be a fit both ways, right? Like the average venture capital relationship is similar in length to the average marriage. So, know who you're getting in bed with, make sure they're good partners. And we try to have that kind of partnership with our early stage companies, and understanding like, why are you seeking venture capital? Are you trying to grow faster? How are you thinking about scaling your business rapidly? How are you thinking about exits? How are you thinking about partnership? You should be thinking about Canada for most businesses is not enough. And so we often expect kind of a perspective around the US market. Having some of those nuggets will help you in terms of securing venture funding and having your first kind of deals and path to scale.
I'm going to give the softer side of the kind of quantitative stuff here. Is when I think about an exit and being an LP and having seen businesses go through exits, the ones that I kind of have always admired are the ones that ultimately make sure that their product still has a pulse when they do exit, when they are acquired, when there is a strategic, whatever route is taken in that next phase of your business, making sure that you carve out the operational space for you to be able to do what you do, and whether it's an asset light roll up of some sort, of being able to make sure that your business does not get killed in the process, because that's it's your baby, like it's part of your life for so long, and that being able to make sure that it still has that pulse when it does move into that next phase of its life. I'd urge just kind of being mindful of that, when you do reach that next chapter, it's making sure that it's don't kill it.
Great insights, everyone. Thank you. I think we're pretty much done on the panel, but we are going to open up some questions to anyone in the room for any of the panelists. So we will pass the mic around and get questions from anyone that wants to ask any. Down in the back. You have to be the furthest away. We can barely hear you up here, so you better take the mic.
So thank you very much, first of all, for presenting to us. That was very informative as someone that's not very introduced to the health space. So I really love that. And I wanted to ask on the AI funding perspective, what qualitative metrics or quantitative metrics are you looking at to kind of verify that this product is doing a service, or what are you looking at in terms of a risk factor saying this quality is not as par to what we need to take on this risk, and how do you measure that, I guess is my question.
Just to clarify, are you trying to ask the question around kind of clinical efficacy and how do we validate that, or how do we identify that it's a good application in terms of
Yes.
investability?
Yes, the application of it to say that the thing that you are producing is providing X value, which is worth my time to put into.
So I think with everything we do, and I actually apologize, should have said that in the first question we talk about red flags, like what's the patient impact, what's the clinical impact? Are you driving good patient impact, good clinician outcomes, good provider payer outcomes? Like we do look at that as kind of like, it's almost table stakes, but it is a must. And so we do think about kind of what is the AI solving, what is the solution doing? And then we'll actually look at, depending if it's a diagnostic or if it's an efficiency, like what evidence do you have? Have you done a clinical trial? Do you have efficiency metrics? We'll probably talk to a few SMEs, some of your customers, to actually validate that what you say does good actually does good. And typically studies, talking to patients and talking to customers helps us validate that.
We have, oh, yeah. Any more comments from there? Okay, we have one more question here.
Hi, thank you. I am the co-founder of a company called Repair, and it's a conflict resolution company. And I decided to talk about, since you said that the relationship between VCs and marriages seem to be like a similar time span, so I thought that was a funny thing. But I was wondering, when we're talking about B2C, especially in the health tech, but particularly in mental health, there's a lot of cool stuff that can be done. But I feel like the bar for funding and even getting into conversations seems to be much higher. How do you see, what are the main differences between looking for funding for B2B and B2C? And how can you really position yourself so that you can, so that you can actually get into those rooms and start a conversation?
I think I'm sounding like a Debbie Downer. That's not intentional. I think B2C is hard to do. I think B2C is a great way to validate that there's enough customers and consumers for what you're trying to do. But then I would think about it as a path to a B2B2C as a more sustainable. For most businesses, the CAC to LTV ratio just makes it really hard to do. Mental health, interestingly, has been the #1 funded category, I think, or #1 or 2 for the last 5 years in a row in North America. So there's just been a lot of capital. And we've seen some like such niche solutions that it is just harder, I think, to, again, get to that billion-dollar market. So to the extent that you believe you can have that LTV to CAC long-term, go for it, do B2C. Otherwise, I would think about what are other ways of funding. Most mental health, now dubbed in the US behavioral health, tends to be employer covered, not D2C. And so I think a lot of people don't like to spend. And I would say Canadians, we in general are even worse at wanting to spend on that, which hinders the solution. But I think if you can get either employer or payer or provider funding, that's a great way. And they would like to see your early B2C proof points and the impact that you're driving.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
I was just going to echo that. I think if you can have a B2B2C or a blended model, it works. Like at Maple, we were both direct to consumer and via employer business. I led the employer business there. So having that blended model can be quite successful. In my current business, we have a bit of a mix of a model that's B2B and then also B2B2C. So you can kind of generate some sustainability of revenue by having a good base of SaaS revenue and then benefit from some upswings and having a portion of your book being B2B2C where you can.
I might have a question in this regard. So probably it's Christy, you're the best person to talk about this maybe. You said you being future fertility, doing things in clinical side as well as, having to navigate the regulatory side of things, and then, have to do the clinical compliance as well. So from someone else, I heard that found it better to do it bottom up, from patient level, or from the community level, or from the patient level, getting a buy-in from them, and then going up stage by stage to the regulatory side of things. But I have also heard that's may not be the best way to go. From your experience, building future fertility, which is the best mix of doing this?
So I think from a regulatory standpoint, it has to be based on clinical validation and proving that the technology works, that it solves a problem, and proving that clinical use case. That's often what, especially if you're doing class 2, that they want to see. We benefit from being class 1 in some regions and class 2 in others. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's bad. It's complicated for sure. I think that the kind of bottom-up piece with patients is really compelling once you're into a clinic or into a lab, and it helps you to spread the technology across more clinics or drive adoption within that clinic. So I certainly think there's a role for bottom-up there. There might be from a regulatory standpoint. I'm just not as familiar with that being a potential pathway, because when I joined, so I'm not the founder, I joined about 3 years ago. I was hired to come in and run the business. They'd already had some early product market fit and a bit of the kind of early customer base and some of the regulatory frameworks in place. So I got to take it and grow from it. So I don't know if there's another approach that would have worked for us. I don't know that it would make sense for what we're doing, but there might be a path for other types of regulatory approaches or pathways.
Great. I don't know if I should pick Jacob's brain as well on that.
In terms of the kind of regulatory environment, it's completely different. It's obviously, we are, as I mentioned before, working in insurance provision and being able to underwrite and carry the risk and carry the liability and do the payouts and claim management, all of that. It is like working in like a walled off garden for every province. It's kind of crazy. But there is so many efficiencies that you get from that, and it actually helps you kind of build this whole product in a way that you take from each experience the ability to kind of refine your product, remove that friction, find better ways to go to market. And when you are overcoming those hurdles, it is something that you kind of learn from. And I'm not directly addressing the bottom-up question, but I am looking at this from like a regulatory standpoint of how do you think about trying to find learned efficiencies through doing that.
Okay. Do we have time for one more? Okay, we do. Someone in the middle?
Dear panel, I have a question regarding regulatory/approval. So I'm working at a medical robotics startup doing invasive surgery, and we have clinical trials coming up next year. And our CEO has described the next 3 or 4 years of the clinical trial process as crossing the desert, where you're just trying to conserve energy and make it to the end. And not a lot of product development will happen during that time. So my question is, what do companies do while getting regulatory approval process from what you've seen? Do you develop new products or do you conserve energy? What do the engineers work on during that time?
It's a great question. We're doing it right now. We're doing this exercise right now where we are going through every provincial regulation and approval. And our engineers are not sitting idle. We are working with our customers in places where we do have market fit, where we do have an operating product, where we do have the ability or semblance of, can we find customers or find an ideal customer and learn from that customer to help us build a backlog of things that we can do or that we can't do, and take inventory of that. So being able to kind of take this time to do that, while it does feel like idle time, this is time you're going to wish you had once you do cross that desert, that you're not building from that point. You need to be thinking about, how do you build that backlog? How do you think about, how do you prioritize your resources? What kind of the workload is going to be like, what the resources are going to take to do that, and the time to do that, because gosh, it always takes longer than you think.
Yeah, I would echo that. I think the other kind of piece that I could add is sometimes there's other markets that could create revenue streams for you. Different countries have different regulatory approval requirements. For instance, we're not in the US broadly right now because we would have to go de novo as a class 2, which for anyone that knows a bit about that, it's a tough go, particularly in the current FDA context in the US. But we've had a lot of success in other markets, and sometimes there's other markets that are growing at CAGRs that are higher than these more traditional markets. So finding other pathways into other markets that, maybe the hurdles are lower, that could be something to focus on or work through. And then sometimes you can do other product development, right? Early innovation, research into other areas. We're making the kind of shift from being a one-trick pony to a multi-product company, and are doing that kind of behind the scenes while we grow our core product. So there's ways to be scrappy with resources and either bring in more revenue or make sure that when you are, ready from a regulatory standpoint, you have this like really great product that's ready to go to market.
Ella, any comments? Okay, we're going to wrap it up. Everyone, big round of applause for our panelists, Ella, Christy, and Jacob. Thank you, guys. That was great.
Thank you.